Good morning, everyone. It's Lisa Young Sutton with another video. This is another requested video from a few people. And I was kind of dragging my feet on this one. I started it and stopped the video quite a few times before I got it right. And that's simply because I don't read the cards this way, plain and simple. I'm going to explain exactly why. So first of all, what am I talking about here? This is a pros and cons reading. This is laying a line for benefits and a line for detriments. A line for what will be favorable, a line for what will be unfavorable. Okay, let's talk about the deck first. This is Pixie's Astounding Lenormand by Edmund Zebrowski. I never even knew who made this before. It's good I make these videos. I learn more about my decks that I'm using. Anyway, I love any deck that comes in a tin. I mean, you can just throw it in your bag and take it with you so easily, and you don't have to buy a bag for it and all of that fun stuff. Anyway, okay, so here we go. Now, so what is this type of reading? Well, a common use for the Lenormand deck is to use it to ask how something will turn out, correct? Some readers like to lay a line of cards for pros and benefits or favorable aspects, and another for the cons and detriments and unfavorable aspects. But I want you to think about this. Why is it that so many readers have a problem with this type of question? And they do. This is such a common question I get all the time. I don't understand how to do this type of reading. And I myself, anytime I've ever tried to do this type of reading when I was first learning, it grated against me. I was like, no, this isn't right. There's something totally off about this, right? And it took me a while to figure it out. All right, so what you're trying to do when you tell the cards, this line is only going to show benefits, this line is only going to show detriments, you're trying to fit square pegs in round holes. Suddenly you have to interpret negative cards in your benefits line and positive cards in your detriments line. And that is why you suddenly feel out of sync, because it's not the way we normally read these cards. Well, it's not the way I normally do, and like I said, I know it's the way most people don't, because this is such a common problem with this type of reading. So, wouldn't it be easier to simply ask the cards for a story, which is what I do every time I read the cards. They're either describing something, and I may use a focus card, and the cards are describing that. I'm using the cards as descriptors, or, I may start with the first card, and every card describes it, right? Or I'm reading the cards as a story, like a comic strip. This is where my story begins, this is where it ends. Simple. That's the way I read all the time, and so the cards know that, and everything is in sync. We just flow, okay? So, what are you doing when you're asking for pros and cons? Well, you're really asking how something will turn out, aren't you? You're asking, basically you're asking, should I or shouldn't I do this? Or you're trying to stack the odds in your favor, right? You're trying to see what's ahead of you and what you're up against, so that you can, get a jump start on it, right? But think of better ways of asking for this type of information. What if you just asked, how will it turn out? How will it turn out if I blank? Or how will it turn out if I don't? How will it turn out if I do? How will it turn out if I don't? Right? Think of your path spreads. Isn't that what path spreads are? Like if I do, if I don't, and if I go left, if I go right, that's path spreads are great. But this pros and cons kind of, like I said, you're trying to fit square pegs in round holes. Think about other ways of asking this. What will I experience if I blank? What will I experience if I don't? That kind of thing. So it's always easier to not tell the cards the story, but let them tell you, right? Let them simply show you the pros and cons and the ups and downs. Don't tell them you have to put all the pros here and all the cons here. No, just ask a question and let the cards fall naturally and see what the pros and cons are and let them tell you the story. Okay, so do you want to know how to tell that you have a good question? I mean, this is probably something I should mention right now. Do you want to know how you know that your thought process is good and that you and the universe are on the same communication page? Do you want to know how to tell the difference? It's so easy that you probably think it's too easy. It's simply a feeling. How do you feel about the question you're asking? You may not know until you lay the cards. As soon as you lay those cards, does it flow easily, or do you say, oh my God, I have no idea. I've never even seen these cards before. These aren't Lenormand cards. Is that the way it feels? Now, granted, when you're first learning, it may always feel like that. I mean, to an extent, because you still don't know your primary vibes. You still don't know the meanings completely. You have to keep referring to your lists, your book, my book, hopefully. And you haven't even firmly established in your mind yet how you're going to be interpreting these cards. You're like, wait a minute, am I describing or reading this as a story? I can't remember. You do that a lot in the beginning. And then you just pick up the cards and you start over and you get more organized. So that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about when you know what you're doing, you know what your cards mean, and you lay them out and they suddenly make no sense to you. Well, that means that you did not get your question right. Okay? That's almost always what that means. So, now, the cards are a communication tool. Remember, you and the universe have to be speaking the same language. If you're speaking Latin and they're speaking French, you are not going to get anywhere. So you have to establish your reading style, your card meanings, all of that, and then it will all flow. Then you'll be in sync, and that is how you know it's right. And if you don't get to the heart of the matter right from the beginning of what information you're seeking, if you are asking some convoluted question that just sounds good, but it's not really asking what you really want to know, that's when you will look at those cards and you'll say, I have no clue. This doesn't make sense. Maybe I wasn't focused, whatever. But it's really all about the question. Okay, so let's get on with this because, yes, sometimes people do have to perform these types of readings because they're part of a group or something, right? So if you are in that position and you have to, I'm going to help you to do this more easily. So the first thing you need to know is that you cannot change your card meanings. You cannot suddenly see your negative cards as positive and try to make your positive cards negative. It won't work. I mean, like this snake. I know the snake's not here, but it just popped into my head because the snake is a complicated, difficult card, no matter what. And you will see people calling it yoga and kundalini and, intelligence and desire and all that. Well, let's talk about that for a second, because if you are performing a specific reading on the topic of exercise or chakra health, right? In which case it's a descriptive reading. You are using your cards as descriptors. And the snake comes up, well, yeah, then that snake could say you're asking, like, what type of exercise should I, would be best for me right now? And the snake comes up, well, you're asking for cards to describe a type of exercise. So what would the snake be? Yeah, it would be yoga then, right? So that's not the same thing as seeing the snake in any other reading for your normal everyday questions. The snake does not suddenly become kundalini. Your snake is still the card of complications and twists and turns and difficulties and betrayal and all that. All right? Now, intelligence. Okay, where does that come from for the snake? I should look for a snake card so you can focus. Anyway, where does the meaning of here's the snake. Where does the meaning of intelligence come from? Okay, this doesn't have coordinates, but it has it down here. So it's almost on every deck. Almost every deck it has it somewhere. Okay, it's Queen of Clubs, right? That's where intelligence comes from. It comes from that cunning, woman, and she's shrewd, but she's dangerous. It's still a negative card. It's not saying, oh, she's wonderful, she's intelligent, and she's flexible, and she's sexy. No, it's still a negative card. Okay, she's dangerous. Yes, she's intelligent, but she's dangerous. All right, now where does desire come from? That comes from the same kind of thing, desire. That's connecting the snake to other things other than what it was intended to mean in this deck, really, right? Like the tempting of the snake and the Garden of Eden and all that stuff. So yeah, desire, okay? Well, if it is showing up in a reading where it may relate to desire, it's forbidden desire. It's desire that's going to bring difficulties, right? It's dangerous desire. So don't change your meanings, your card meanings, okay? And that's important to understand how to do this type of reading. Okay, so, okay, I'll get off my soapbox. Thanks for that, Paul. Yeah, I was up on my soapbox. Okay, so how do you tackle a pros and cons reading? Simple, simple, simple. Okay, the first thing you want to look at is how many negative and positive cards show up in each line. Remember, you told the cards, this is my favorable line, this is my unfavorable line. So you first look at, maybe I should separate them a little. No, they won't be in the screen then. Okay, so look for how many positive and negative cards you have in each line. This is the favorable line. Well, you have a negative. You're starting right off the bat, right? And with a negative card. You got a negative, you have a positive. You have a positive neutral, another negative, and a neutral. So this favorable line, this line asking or explaining what would be favorable about a situation, I'll give you the question for this in a minute, is already looking pretty bad, right? Because you're asking what would be favorable about this thing that I'm asking, and this is already slightly more negative than positive. Okay, now that's good information right from the start. Now look at your line for what would be unfavorable about this situation. You start right off with a neutral card, right? You got a neutral, then you have a positive neutral, you have a positive, you have another positive neutral and a negative. It's kind of a wash, really. It's actually very neutral, but it is slightly positive, and this is supposed to be the unfavorable aspects regarding this question. So right away, you're seeing some conflict here, and you're seeing that it's not all going to be great or it won't all be bad, right? So now you have to go in. So that was step one, just to get a general overview of what you're dealing with, because sometimes you ask for what will be favorable and there'll be almost all positive cards, and you're like, okay, yeah. And same with the negative sometimes, or the unfavorable lines, sometimes they're almost all negative. Makes it so easy, but life doesn't operate that way, right? Life is all ups and downs. It's a balance. So you're rarely going to find that. So you have to know how to deal with the cards as they fall. All right, so that's number one, is to just get a general overview of what you're dealing with, the positive and negative in each line. So number two is keeping in mind, keep reminding yourself that this top line is what's beneficial and this is what's detrimental. You read the stories now. So first you just looked at the positive and negative aspects of the cards, the energies of the cards. Now you're going to read the stories, okay? So my question was, I just made this up. I told the universe last night, actually, I told the universe, give me an example that won't be so straightforward, won't be so easy, that'll have some, negative cards in the positive line and vice versa. And I just made up a story and I drew the cards. And of course, the universe did not disappoint me. They never do. So my question was, Joe, I made up a person, Joe Schmo. Okay, Joe Schmo and his partner are thinking about moving to Kokomo. Joe Schmo wants to go to Kokomo. And he wants to know if he should. Like, he basically, right? So he's asking for, what would be good if I moved to Kokomo? He's not retired yet. He still has to work, okay? Let's put it that way. He and his partner are not in a committed relationship, but they are in a relationship. So that's like the backstory that I made up, all right? So he wants to know what would be favorable if he moves to Kokomo and what would be unfavorable, all right? So what can we say if we are reading these stories? What would be favorable? Right away you're thinking, well, it starts with an ending here. It starts with something bad. Well, okay, now come on. You actually want this card at the beginning, or somewhere in the beginning of the reading rather than the end. If it's at the end, you don't know what's coming after this. So this is a good place to find your coffin card. So what can we say? Now, the coffin card is like being closed, boxed in, right? Buried, right? This is the card of opening up, finding solutions and all that. So this is actually good that these two cards came together and that this one follows this one, because this is the favorable line. So he'll no longer feel boxed in, right? Maybe he's closing a difficult chapter. Here we have the difficult chapter in his life. He just locked it up, right? That's, sometimes you read that the key isn't opening but closing. Well, that's still a good thing. This is a positive card, okay? He's ending a difficult chapter in his life, okay? Now we have the ring, and the ring is the central card here. It looks like Kokomo will agree with Joe. He'll feel cohesion and a connection, okay? He'll feel like he belongs, maybe. It fits, right? There's a connection. Okay. Now we have Mr. Fox. Okay, we got a negative card up here in the favorable line. But what is the fox the card of? Self-interest. And it's one of my most directional cards. Here we have two of my most directional cards because they're pointing to something. They're right? All right, the fox is pointing to the letter. Okay? So if this is in the favorable line and this is the card of self-interest, right? And it's pointing to the card of communication, well, maybe this move will give Joe the freedom of self-expression, right? Self-interest, communication, self-expression, okay? Maybe he'll finally take the time to write his autobiography. Self-interest, autobiography, writing, okay? Are you seeing where I'm going with that? Okay, now, I want to point something out here, because when I first look at these cards and I think, okay, this guy is moving, right? And right away, I want to see this little trio here as something is wrong with the contract, like his lease, if he's renting, or the sales contract, if he's buying a new house, right? That's what I want to see in these. But you have to remember your question. And this goes back to when you're using the cards in a way that isn't really in sync with you, you're going to keep backsliding and going to what you normally do, how you normally want to read these cards. So that just kind of proves my point, that if this doesn't resonate with you, this type of reading, don't do it. There's always a different way to ask the same question, to get the same information, a way that resonates with you that'll make it easy. You want to always be in sync with the cards. Okay, so looking at the con line now. The con line starts with Joe's partner. And the first thing you have to remember is that this is not the partner's reading. This is not going to tell you, oh, the partner is going to love this new change. And even though it's going to be hard, maybe he'll think it was a hasty decision. It's going to be a little difficult, but he's going to love it. No, you can't say that. This is not his reading. This is Joe's reading. So if the partner card shows up, this is how the partner will impact Joe. That's number one. Number two is remember your question. This is what will be unfavorable. This is the unfavorable line. So it starts with the partner. So this is basically all about how the partner is going to bring something unfavorable to this move to Joe, right? So the partner, looks like the partner is going to be like childish and overly emotional, right? It's going to be a big whiny baby, and Joe's going to wish he left him the hell home, right? Now, this is information and energy coming to Joe, right? Not him. This is always what's coming to Joe. This is Joe's reading. What's coming to Joe? What information? Because of the partner. The partner's causing it, right? The partner's behind it. But what's coming is struggle and hardship. All right? It's going to be hard. So this whole reading is definitely not positive enough, even though the favorable aspects look pretty favorable. these cards bring it down, right? So it's not totally favorable. And the unfavorable line is pretty unfavorable. The energy that's coming to him is the cross, right? So I would tell Joe Schmo to forget Kokomo, you know? Hey, that really rhymed. You know, and if he does choose to go, he'd be better off going alone. You know, maybe the partner will come later. But that's how I would do this. So I hope that explained it to those of you who wanted me to do a video on this type of reading. I hope that explains it. If not, just you know, write in the comments below, ask me questions. You know, I'm always here. I'm here for you. I'm here for you, you guys. So anyway, I hope that made sense, and I will see you in the next video, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.